Alright, so it's been about a month since I last updated the blog about my garden. I just wanted to share what's going on out here with you guys and let you see what all I got going. So, first up we got the spinach. It was growing very well, still is growing very well, but unfortunately it's already gotten so hot here that it's sending out the bolting, the flowers and stamens on each of the plants. So the leaves are really bitter, but I'm going to try to let it grow and produce seeds so I can save them for the next round of spinach. Here's my beets. Beets are very easy to grow and relatively pest-free. They don't have any issues and very good choice for my garden. Here's my kale plant, one of the 4 that I have. It is also growing very well after I dealt with all the slugs. I've been picking them off by hand and just throwing them in soapy water, and reducing their numbers seems to let the kale get very, very large. It's growing very well. I'm very pleased. Over here we have some Swiss chard. It's also growing well. It's a little shaded by various other things, but still growing quite well, and also, like the beets, mostly pest-free. There's another succession planting of beets, another kale plant. I decided to put in a marigold because I've heard they're good pest deterrents, although I've heard that they have also, there is nothing to that, but yeah, I gave it a shot. Over here I got some bush beans growing, very easy to grow and high yields, highly recommend it. Earlier this year I had planted some carrots, and here's one of the larger ones that I have. They I don't know what I did wrong. I can't seem to get carrots to grow very well in my garden, but over here I have a few more coming up, slowly but surely. Here's my cauliflower. It's doing relatively well, although it's got some holes from bugs in it. Unfortunately, my broccoli plant has died. Came out one day and it was just keeled over, so I pulled it up. I had some green bugs on the stem that had chewed all the way through it, so not sure what those are. I'll have to look it up and figure out a solution to the problem. Here's a pepper plant that I've been growing. It's a little stunted because it stayed in the pot too long, but it's got a few little peppers growing on it. We'll see what happens with that. My peas have probably been one of the most successful plants in my garden. They're quite tall, probably about 7 feet tall, like the tallest ones, and they're just covered in pea pods. You can see them all over. I just harvested a bunch of them earlier before I made this video, but they still have tons of pods, and they don't seem to be near stopping anytime soon, so definitely recommend growing peas. Very easy to grow and lots of production, and they also give back to the soil by producing or capturing nitrogen from the air and putting it back into the soil. I haven't had a lot of luck with lettuce this year, but I do have a few heads of lettuce, or not heads, but the leafy lettuce. This is Grand Rapids. It's a variety recommended for my area. It's doing okay. And some romaine and some more Grand Rapids over there. And this is Black Seed Simpson. I think this soil in this bed is just too compacted from the clay to allow those lettuce seeds to germinate fully, and then the ones that did germinate got attacked by slugs, so lettuce has been harder for me to grow this year, but I won't give up on it. And over here I have a row of more bush beans. Since I have all this extra space, they're looking quite happy. Well, this right here is a row of runner beans that I recently planted, and they are just now getting their second set of leaves. But I have, just like the peas, I've tied them up to, or I tied strings up to the fence, and I expect them to grow up to the fence and grow all the way up and produce lots of beans just like the peas. And over here I have another set of succession planting runner beans. They're just now starting to germinate. Hopefully they'll be ready soon. This is one of the better tomatoes that I had growing. It's slowly growing. It's got a few flowers already, as you can see right here. I'm not sure if I should pick them off or just let them keep growing, because the plant's not even that big yet, but I'm just going to let it do its thing and see what happens. And I kind of built a 3-cage system here, but it's not very stable, so we'll see what happens with that. Here's another tomato that I had planted. It's one of the larger ones now. It was small at first, but it's getting quite big, and this cage is much more sturdy. I attached it with string, or the cotton twine, to my fence to keep it from falling over once the tomato gets really big. It's got a few flower pods on it too. It should be producing decent tomatoes pretty soon. Let's hope. This is interesting. Earlier this year I just threw some old, seemed like rotting potatoes that I had in my kitchen just in the soil and kind of buried it, and now the plants have gone crazy, and it's not even in a full sun location. It's just kind of back here in the shade. It gets maybe 1 or 2 hours of sun a day, and plants just love this area back here. I had a compost pile back here last year, and they're growing like crazy. But they do have an infestation of these little flat-looking bugs. Can't tell what they are. I'm not exactly sure, but they're easy enough to ID online. But yeah, they like to eat holes in the leaves. Hopefully the damage is not that bad, but they're really easy to kill if you have to. All you do is just take them off, and there's another one. Just take them off and stomp on them, or anything like that. Just drop them in soapy water. Really easy, and they don't move fast. You can just pick them right off, and that'll get rid of your pests. My wife's garden, she is more interested in growing flowers, but she also doesn't mind if I transplant things if I have too much of any one thing. So it's a good way to minimize waste in the garden and get more production out of my plants by just transplanting my thinnings over to this area. So we've got a tomato over here. So there's a small tomato coming up, some spinach. She's got some lettuce around. There's a carrot coming up. There's another bush bean that I planted. Some beets. I don't know if you can see them very clearly, but some beets that I transplanted. This right here is a raspberry that I bought from Big Lots a year ago, and it has developed into quite a plant. Only $5 for this thing, and the time, but it's well worth it, I believe. Finally, we have a jalapeno plant, which I put in the ground earlier this month. It's growing quite well, and no peppers yet, but it's still growing very good, and I expect to see peppers within the next month or so. Okay, so in addition to my backyard garden, the square foot garden, and the peas and tomatoes and lettuce that I have in the backyard, I decided to dedicate some of my front yard area to growing some corn, and I used just typical cardboard boxes to cover up the grass in my front yard, and it killed it after, I'd say, about 2.5 to 3 weeks easily. You know, there's still some grass coming up, but it's enough to allow the corn to germinate, and once the corn gets bigger, it'll shade out any grass that's growing in the immediate vicinity of it. And I planted 2 different succession plantings of corn. This is the first and larger of the corn, getting quite tall. And this is my second planting. I still haven't thinned out the seedlings yet, but this way I can harvest more corn over the season instead of just one big crop. And then also in the front yard, I used some of the space to plant another tomato. I don't have any extra cages, so I'm going to let this one do its thing, but you know, I'm sure it'll produce something, and hopefully it will resist the blight for as long as possible. Okay, so the last plant that I want to show you is my blueberry plant that I also bought from Big Lots a year ago. You can see it's got some decent sized blueberries on it already. They should be ripening here in the next month or two. There's another one. I bought 2 of them. Planted them up front up here to get the most sunlight. And they're growing very well. I mean, they were very teeny last year, but they're certainly growing with vigor. And here's another couple of blueberries I just planted this year. I got these off of the Gurney's website through a site called Reddit. If you're familiar with Reddit, it's just like a large forum of different kinds of people, different interests, but somebody had linked a link to Gurney's blueberries for free. Basically, if you just sent them shipping and handling, they would send you 2 blueberry plants for free, and that's what I did, and these are the ones that I got. Hopefully by next year, these little guys will be the size of these monsters. So that's my garden for this year. Hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for another update next month.